if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
We can't just keep on boosting everybody, yet Boris Johnson today says we must get boosted. Let's try and work that one out. Energy bills, 25% of your electricity bill taken in green subsidy. Where does the money go? Tonight, we're going to tell you. And joining me on Talking Pints, a British sporting legend, Eddie the Eagle. But first, the news.
Very good evening to you. I'm Polly Middlehurst. And as you've just been hearing, the Prime Minister has been addressing the nation in the latest COVID briefing this afternoon. Boris Johnson said over 60% of people in intensive care with COVID are unvaccinated. He's also announced that the government will roll out daily COVID testing for 100,000 critical workers. This comes as daily reported cases of COVID have exceeded 200,000 for the first time. Despite the high number of cases, the Prime Minister has not announced any new restrictions.
Thinks our battle with COVID is over, I'm afraid is profoundly wrong. This is a moment for the utmost caution. Together with the Plan B measures that we introduced before Christmas, we have a chance to ride out this Omicron wave without shutting down our country once again. We can keep our schools and our businesses open, and we can find a way to live with this virus.
Away from COVID, more than 70 migrants have made it across the English Channel to the UK in the first crossings of the year. Border Force and the Dover Lifeboat Charity intercepted a number of small boats in the Channel despite fairly rough conditions today. It follows new figures that show the number of people making the dangerous trip trebled last year. There were more than 28,000 illegal crossings in 2021. Politics now, and Sir Keir Starmer has insisted Labour is a patriotic party, and he said if people voted him into government, he'd write a new chapter of Labour's history. Speaking to local politicians in Birmingham, the Labour leader said he offered a new contract with the British people based on the principles he named of security, prosperity and respect. He also said his party would create 100,000 new start-up businesses and hubs of excellence. The judge ruling over the civil sex lawsuit against the Duke of York has told the court he will make a decision very soon on whether to dismiss the case. Virginia Giuffre is suing Prince Andrew for alleged sexual assault when she was a teenager 2 decades ago. The Duke's legal team deny all the allegations. Yesterday, a document was made public revealing the terms of a $500,000 settlement from the convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein to Miss Giuffre, which prevented her from speaking publicly. Novak Djokovic will play at the Australian Open after being granted a medical exemption from being vaccinated against COVID. Tournament bosses confirmed earlier the Serbian will defend his title, even though being vaccinated is a requirement to play in Melbourne. The reason for being granted the exception will remain private, according to the tournament director, Craig Tiley. The Australian Open will now begin later on this month. You're up to date. Now let's get back to Farage.
Good evening. Well, the front page of today's Daily Telegraph gave us the overnight news that Professor Andrew Pollard, chairman of the Joint Committee for Vaccination and Immunisation, had said fourth jabs should not be offered until there is more evidence. He also said we need to target the vulnerable in future rather than to everybody. Well, when I saw that, I thought this very much backs up what I was saying here last week. I was discussing my reluctance to have the booster on the basis that if I accept this third jab, there'll be a fourth jab with the spring and a fifth jab, and where will it all end? And it began to make me think, well, actually, having the booster just doesn't stop you from catching COVID. It may well, looking at the evidence, make you less ill, but it doesn't stop you catching it, and it doesn't stop you spreading it. So I was quite pleased to see that from Sir Andrew Pollard this morning. But at 5 o'clock today, the Prime Minister had a press conference where once again he pushed really hard for boosters. And that's because there are either side of 10 million or so people out there that have just not had the booster. Now, this despite today's figures, a new record for 218,000 confirmations of COVID, most of them, of course, Omicron. And there are some hospitals that are under real pressure. But I also thought today, in Johnson's statement, there was a threat, a veiled threat, when he said needing a booster to be able to travel abroad will likely become the norm in the coming weeks. Well, that's certainly something the European Union want to do. So in the light of all of this, should we keep boosting? Should the emphasis be on boosters as opposed to treatments? I have to say, I'm open-minded, but I'm still not convinced we're going down the right course. And I thought Sir Andrew Pollard very much backed up my view. Now, you can tweet your views, and this is new. It's a change. It's hashtag Farage on GBNews. Also, you can follow us today for the first time on DAB radio. So if you're in your car and it's got a digital radio, you can listen to this show as well as seeing it. Well, joining me to discuss should we keep boosting is Professor Robert Reid, Professor of Infectious Diseases at the University of Southampton and member of the JCVI. But you're speaking to us tonight, I believe, in a personal capacity. Good evening and welcome to the show.
Good evening.
Do you understand why we do see a slight contradiction here? That we're being told by the government that getting the third jab, getting the booster, is absolutely vital. It's the only thing that will save us. And yet, you know, we have a very senior man in Sir Andrew Pollard saying when it comes to a fourth jab, maybe we should just hold our horses. Maybe we should just think about vaccinating the vulnerable rather than everybody over the age of 12. Do you understand, when you see those slightly contradictory arguments, why there are 10 million or so people still reluctant to get the booster?
Well, thank you. Well, Sir Andrew's right. It's always essential to look hard at the data. And one of the things that the JCVI does is it vaccinates when it's necessary to do so, and it doesn't vaccinate when it's not necessary to do so. That's what you would expect an advisory body to advise. In this case, Andrew is completely correct. We need to look really hard at what's happening now in our hospitals, in our communities in the UK, before we go for a fourth booster in particular parts of the population. For example, the very vulnerable, the very elderly.
Yeah.
There's no doubt that the booster program that was instituted late November, early December in a hurry has saved an awful lot of people from getting extremely unwell. And we're seeing that now in real time. And that has always been the objective of the vaccine program, is to stop people from getting unwell. And the problem at the moment, as you've seen, is that there's an awful lot of virus about, and we really need to stop people getting unwell in the best way we can. And actually, the booster has already shown that it achieves that objective.
OK, Robert, I understand the argument you're making about those that have had the double vaccine, the booster, when they contract the virus, becoming less ill. And perhaps, if the emphasis stayed on that, people might be, those 10 million might be listening far more attentively. But the idea that's given again and again is that if we get the booster, we're protecting our friends and family. And actually, that's just not true, is it? Because whether you've had the booster or not, you can still very clearly catch the Omicron variant and pass it on. Why do these arguments keep getting made if they're simply not true?
Well, they are. It is certainly true that a booster, relative to just having 2 doses, reduces your chances of acquiring the virus. I mean, the data on that is clear. It's not an absolute.
Is it? Well, share it with us, please.
Right.
Share it with us.
The data quite clearly shows that a booster gives you a differential greater impact on likelihood of becoming infected and transmitting compared to 2 doses. It's not an absolute effect, you're quite right. If you've had the booster, there's a chance you could still acquire the virus if somebody infects you. But on the other hand, relative to whether you hadn't had a booster, there is still an effect. So across the population, that does have an impact. When you consider that millions of us are now going to get infected with Omicron, then just a small change has a tremendous impact in slowing the progression of the virus into the more vulnerable population, which is what we're trying to do. But you're right, ultimately, the biggest impact at the individual level is that this vaccine, this booster, will stop you getting extremely unwell. And that's really what the big message to your viewers is.
OK, well, fine, and I've heard the message very clearly. I still go back to this question, and Robert, I keep asking everybody that comes on about this, show me some evidence. Please show me some actual evidence that having the booster makes me less likely to catch Omicron and pass it on. And so far, I get warm, reassuring words, but there's no real evidence. There's no real data that I've seen.
Well, the data is elaborate, of course, but most of it is already in the public domain. There's a reduction in 90% in your chance of having extreme disease if you're infected. There's currently a reduction in about 60% in you getting symptomatic infection, and there's a reduction approximately of about 40% in your chances of acquiring infection if you see the virus. Now, those levels of protection will wane over the next few weeks, as it does with all vaccines. But it's reassuring that extreme illness is prevented by 90% in people who've been boosted.
When you say all vaccines, I mean, I've had a measles jab and I've had a BCG jab against tuberculosis. I've never had to have those boosted.
They are very different forms of vaccine. They are very different. They're both live vaccines. We generally don't boost with live vaccines at a regular level. And of course, they're old established infections. The difference with this disease is that it's a very new virus infection. We don't have any memory to the components of the virus that we've never seen the virus before. So we're having to vaccinate and then boost people in a hurry to get on top of it. So it's a different problem to the live vaccines such as measles and BCG.
Professor Robert Reid, thank you very much for joining us here and making the arguments on GB News. Now, joining me now is Dr. Asher Salmon, Deputy Director General of the Israeli Ministry of Health. And we're delighted that you're able to join us here in London this evening.
Good evening.
Now, the reason I want to talk to you is because I know that you as a government have been very, very pro the vaccines and pushing them very, very hard. But now you're announcing that there has to be a fourth vaccine, a second booster, because you've got large outbreaks of cases. And I just wonder, doesn't this rather prove the point that actually, we're debating the booster here, the third jab at the moment, but doesn't your situation rather prove the point that this isn't really working very well?
It is not working in a sense that we would expect, give 2 jabs and that's the end of this pandemic. No, it's not the case. Unfortunately, as Professor Reed said, it's a new type of infection. Our system, our immune system is not constructed to handle it yet. And unfortunately, we see ourselves giving another boost now. Now, keep in mind that Israel gave the third boost like 3 or 4 months before the UK. And we are now reaching 6 months or more after the third boost. And we actually started to boost now for the fourth time, mostly the vulnerable population.
And are you seeing people becoming more reluctant as you advocate jab after jab after jab after jab?
It makes sense. We all get fatigue. I mean, you see this type of pan-social fatigue from this pandemic, from jobs, from bad stories, from all restrictions. And it's not easy to convince people to go and get the fourth jab. I was quite amazed to see how many old people were standing in line today to receive the jab. It means that we somehow deliver the message that it is safe and it is beneficial for this population.
So when would you estimate, Dr. Salmon, when would you estimate the fifth jab to be?
I hope never, but I can't say. It depends how this pandemic would develop. I mean, I was predicting a year ago that it would end toward sometime during 2022. Maybe I'll be wrong and foolish. And in a point, this pandemic will end. It's not a lifetime pandemic. Usually it takes 2 to 3 to 4 years, and that's the end. I hope after the fourth jab, we will develop enough, I would say, a resilient enough immune response. And in that sense, hopefully that would be the end for a while at least. It may be that we would give it with the flu jab every autumn. You know, it would be combined in the same jab, and all of us would get it exactly as we get the flu jabs now.
Do you feel some sense, given that you're on this fourth jab, do you feel some sense of disappointment at the effectiveness of the vaccine? The fact that, the figures that I saw, are, 10 weeks after the booster, 2/3 of its efficiency had gone. Do you feel a slight sense of disappointment about this?
Well, the last point you were mentioning is mostly the antibody level. It's not the clinical benefit. And it makes sense. Of course, I feel a sense of disappointment. We all had this real hope that, the jobs would come and that would be the end of the story. But it seems that it's not a uni-layer solution. The jobs, vaccines are maybe the most important layer that we have, but then we need other layers. And we need, of course, physical distancing in the proper places, and we have to take reasonable steps in order to pass, I do believe, the next few months, and hopefully that would be the end.
And how bad is the infection breakout in Israel right at this moment in time?
Well, thanks to God, for us, not as bad as in the UK, but we do see a sharp rising in numbers. So we are in thousands now. We were like 200 cases in November a day, and now we're around 6,000. We'll see more. I don't know if we'll reach the level of the UK, but certainly Omicron is quite a challenge. And not necessarily by developing some masses of severe patients, but rather this massive spread, quick spread, among the whole section of our society, and that takes a price.
Thank you very much indeed for updating us on the fourth jab in Israel. That was Dr. Asher Salmon, and there you are. He believes the fourth jab, he hopes that'll be the last one. Well, coming up, we're going to talk about the reality of the price you pay for your energy, what green taxes are doing to your bills at home. I've been banging on about this since 2013. At last, it's out there in the public domain. We're about to tell you where some of your money is being spent.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello again. Things have turned a bit colder and tomorrow will feel certainly chilly, but with a bit more sunshine and with lighter winds, probably won't feel quite as cold as it did today. Quite quickly tomorrow evening, however, we're going to see a frost returning. Follow the isobars, they point all the way up to the north, which is where our air is coming from. The isobars still pretty close together across the northeast, but a very, very windy day here, and still those winds continue to bring wintry showers across the northeast throughout the night. So there is the potential for snow showers and a continued risk of ice across the northeast, but it could also be icy across parts of Wales and Northern Ireland, with showers coming in here and temperatures dropping close to freezing. Most towns and cities just about staying above zero, but certainly rural areas there will be a frost, but actually for most it'll be a fine, bright, cold start to Wednesday. Still some showers for Northern Ireland and Wales, some snow on the hills, but they should fade away. And the showers also fading from the far northeast. Still a cold wind blowing along these North Sea coasts, but for most the wind's a lot lighter during tomorrow, and with largely sunny skies. Temperatures still a touch below average, but as I said, probably feeling a bit more pleasant than today. Quite quickly though, look at the blue taking hold of the map. This is tomorrow evening. Quite quickly a frost forming, temperatures dropping with those light winds and clear skies. So it's going to be a very cold start to Thursday. Towns and cities likely to be -1, -2. Rural areas -5, -6, maybe -10, where there's snow lying on the mountains of Scotland. Now it will slowly turn milder across Northern Ireland as wet weather comes in here. Mostly rain, but some snow on the hills. And we'll see that then working into Wales, Northern England, Scotland. Rain at low levels, but some snow on the higher routes here for a time on Thursday. Further south, it'll be all rain as things eventually turn milder, but another cold day across the east, and again turning frosty, with the potential for some ice on Thursday night.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Before we get to green taxes and where your money is going, Some response to the should we keep boosting question. Paul on Twitter says, there will come a time when people will just get bored of the whole booster thing and nobody will hardly turn up. Well, one of the reasons that Johnson did the press conference today is they've gone from massive numbers being boosted, and that was after the press conference when Johnson said this was an emergency and up to 1 million a day were going to get the booster, and that is now down in the low 100,000s. Scarlett says, I've had the first and second jabs plus the booster. I'm still having restrictions placed on me and still having to wear a mask. Why should I keep getting boosted with no foreseeable benefit? Anne says, perhaps we should have a yearly booster like they do with flu jabs. Natural immunity will build up, won't it? Well, maybe the best natural immunity, funny enough, is actually to catch Omicron. Not that I'm particularly keen to get it, but maybe in a way it is. Another viewer, Anon, says, as long as there are people who can't abide by rules, then unfortunately, yes, because cases will continue. And that is a dig at those that have not had any vaccines yet. Mike says, no, not if you have contracted COVID and then recovered after 2 vaccines. So there's the argument. You've had a double vax, you've had COVID, you've got the antibodies. Why on earth do you need a booster? Now, energy. I've been talking about energy prices since the first day I started here at GB News. I've been talking about green subsidy since 2013, but not that many people really wanted to listen. Well, now they do. And joining me to discuss all of this is journalist and author Ross Clark. Ross, good evening.
Good evening. Hi.
Great piece you wrote in today's Daily Mail. It really, really was good. And I want Ross to share some of that, please, with our viewers this evening. First, the numbers. When people get their electricity bill, how much of that is green subsidy? How much of that is green tax?
It's about 25.5% of it, which is extraordinary, unofficial tax. And this is in addition to VAT at 5%, by the way.
Yes.
And that sort of thing. I mean, this included in this, for example, we're all collectively paying £6.3 billion a year to something called the renewables obligation, which is subsidising wind, solar farms, biomass, power stations and the like. We're paying $2 billion collectively towards a climate change levy, which is a tax on gas and other fossil fuels. We're paying £640 million a year through something called the Energy Company Obligation, which funds insulation schemes, many of them shoddy, by the way, and which have caused, houses have been trying to give a quick fix with cavity wall insulation, which has had to be subsequently removed. And so it goes on, and that's, huge invisible tax. We're also paying, we're also going to have to pay $3.2 billion for smart meters over the next few years.
Well, smart meters actually deserve a programme on their own, and I'm going to do that over the course of the next couple of weeks, and maybe you'll come back being the kind of investigative journalist that you are and share this with us. Ross, I mean, the reason we've got to 25% on electricity is, of course, because all the mainstream political parties support it. Mainstream media has been, certainly broadcasters until now, have been in support of it. But the ways in which some of the money goes, I've been astonished by. You mentioned there very, very briefly biofuels. Just share with GB News viewers what happens at a place called Drax in Yorkshire.
Mm-hmm. Well, Drax used to be our biggest coal-fired power station, but over the past few years, it's steadily been converted to burn wood chips. Now, these are imported from North American forests, and according to some calculations, this is an even filthier form of fuel than coal burning, because the idea that it's zero carbon, as the government claims, is ridiculous. I mean, burning wood emits large amounts of carbon. It's only zero carbon on the conceit that, the trees have only grown in recent times, unlike, coal, which has been buried under the earth for several million years. But, it's releasing a lot of carbon in the air. It involves more carting the wood chips across the Atlantic. There's carbon emissions involved in that, and it's just completely ridiculous that the government claimed it to be zero carbon, and we're all paying for that.
It's just unbelievable that people are paying for trees to be cut down in North America, transported across the Atlantic and burnt in Yorkshire, releasing loads of CO2. Share with us briefly the concept of constraint payments, please.
Yeah, constraint payments are payments which are made to the owners of wind farms, mainly, when the wind is blowing too strongly, funny enough. We've got so many wind turbines now that the National Grid can't cope with all the electricity that they're generating when, we're paying sort of, millions of pounds a year to compensate wind farm owners to turn their turbines off when it gets too windy.
I shouldn't laugh,
we have no means
really.
of storing this energy.
I shouldn't laugh, really, Ross, because actually a lot of people are going to struggle like crazy to pay their bills, and there are going to be some very big shocks to people in the spring when the bills come, plus the tax increases. And Ross, I'm pushed for time, but I must quickly ask you about this. In his party conference speech last year, Boris Johnson talked about perhaps up to 30% of the British countryside being rewilded. What does that do?
Well, the idea is that, we return it to peat bog and woodland and it absorbs carbon and so on. But at the same time, it's taking a lot of land out of agricultural production. And some of the same people who advocate rewilding, on another day, they'll be complaining about food miles and saying we all got to eat local food. And of course, they're not connecting the two things and thinking that rewilding is actually making it harder to eat locally produced food.
Dear, oh dear, oh dear. Ross Clark, great work. Keep up the great work. Come back and see us again soon. And thank you for sharing that with us. Now, a subject that I've covered pretty relentlessly over the course of the last couple of years, I guess more than anything, to try and wake up people as to the truth and to get other media channels to cover a story they weren't very keen on, are the channel crossings. Well, we're very lucky here at GB News because we have Mark White here as our Home Affairs and Security Editor. And Mark, you've been in Dover Harbour today. I would guess you were the only media person there. What's been happening?
Yeah, there were a few photographers, I think, from the newspapers, but I couldn't see any other television cameras here in Dover today. I think I'm shortly going to be given the freedom of Dover. I've been here so many times in recent months. But yes, again, today it was a significant day because it was the first small boats to make the crossing from France to the UK in 2022. A number of small boats, we don't know exactly how many, but I counted at Dover 71 migrants in two separate boat landings there, and not boats that landed in Dover, but certainly the Dover lifeboat landing a number of migrants, 35 at 10:30 this morning, and that was followed a few hours later by the Border Force vessel Hurricane that came in with 36 migrants on board. So 71 today that I counted in Dover. We don't know if there were any others elsewhere that we've missed, but significant, I think, Nigel, that there was only really a window of a few hours where it was just about passable in the channel to push these small boats out from northwestern France, and that's exactly what the people smugglers did to put these boats out from beaches in the Dunkirk area across to the UK, and a few of them made it.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's been blowing a hoolie for the last week, and it was literally just a few hours, wasn't it, when the wind was down to about 10 miles an hour. Now, we've had, over the course of the last few days, the official figures for those that were stopped crossing the channel or found on the beaches. We have no estimates for those who landed on beaches and got away. An official figure for last year, 28,300, treble what the number had been in the previous year. From what I can see, Mark, there is absolutely no disincentive whatsoever for this to continue this year. Do you have, and I'm putting you on the spot here, you haven't got to answer, do you have any idea of what the scale of this might be in 2022?
Oh, I think it's going to be significant. I mean, it would not surprise me if we got to the point where there were double the number of migrants crossing by the end of this year as compared to last year, so up towards 60,000 or so. It wouldn't surprise me at all. We've got, of course, the Borders and Immigration Bill that will soon come into law, and that's going to have, we're told, a maximum life in prison for people smugglers. But that's not going to be any real disincentive for them from a criminal enterprise that nets them thousands of, or millions, I should say, of euros on weeks where it's good enough to put a good few boats into the water and across to the UK. And the other issue, of course, within this bill, they say that those claiming asylum will go to the back of the queue. Well, that doesn't mean that they're going to be returned to France or wherever. It just means that they have even longer to wait before they find out whether or not they get asylum. So is that really a disincentive for them?
No, it's not at all, and we'll keep on following this story. Mark White, thank you for your report from Dover Harbour this evening. Well, it'll be at least 60,000 this year, maybe nearer 80,000, unless something changes, but I don't see any great prospect of that, and it's one of the reasons why Boris Johnson is now 16 points behind the Labour Party in the red wall seats. Now, talking of the Labour Party, my What the Farage moment. Sir Tony Blair, now Downing Street, have insisted that Tony Blair's knighthood was a matter for the Queen today, which seems most unusual. After nearly 600,000 people have signed a petition calling for it to be revoked, chiefly because of his role in the Iraq War, Number 10 denied that Boris Johnson had any input on the decision to elevate the former PM to the Order of the Garter, which of course is one of the highest honours in the land. But the spokesman also appeared to endorse the move, pointing out every other ex-premier before Sir Tony had either joined the order or the Scottish equivalent. Sir Keir Starmer, who did actually oppose the war in Iraq in 2003, said, "I don't think it's a thorny issue at all. I think he deserves the honour. Obviously, I respect the fact that people have different views." And that is Keir Starmer aligning the Labour Party very much more with Tony Blair than with Jeremy Corbyn. And I know, for 600,000 people to sign a petition asking for it to be revoked shows you it has provoked much anger. But typical Number 10, nothing to do with us, Gov. Please put all the blame on the Queen. Well, what else would you expect, really? My other What the Farage moment is parking tickets. Drivers are being handed an average of more than 22,000 tickets every day by private parking firms, according to new research. Companies issued 4 million tickets to British motorists between April and September of last year. That news was put out by the PA News Agency, and that's despite the pandemic and car use being 25% lower than pre-coronavirus pandemic levels. So this is an extraordinary rate of tickets, and I have to say that if you do come up and appeal against these private companies, they make life very, very difficult for you indeed. It's actually pretty unpleasant, the whole process. Now, in a moment, I'll be joined by somebody who, from nowhere, hit the front pages, hit the headlines back in 1988 in the most dramatic way. Opinions about him were very divided. I found the whole thing the most terrific fun. In a moment, on Talking Pints, the one and only Eddie the Eagle.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Now, before I introduce face-to-face our guest this evening, I'm going to show you a clip from the Calgary Winter Olympics in 1988. And if you're too young to remember it, well, watch it, because it really was quite a moment in this country.
5 meters, he's off first in the second and final round. Here on the 70-meter hill, the fans are going crazy for Eddie.
They're saying, Eddie, Eddie, send down Eddie. And Eddie is whooping it up there. He's been waving to the crowd, starting the wave from the top position in the whole jump. Friends here, we're doing good things, and let's enjoy ourselves.
On his way.
That jump looked a little farther. I think he almost got the 60-meter mark. His first jump was 55 meters, so if he can have a longer one here.
It really was. Eddie the Eagle, welcome to GB News
Thank
and
you.
Talking Pints. Now, as I say, for younger people who weren't around, they'll find this difficult to believe. But you were the centre of just some of the most, well, publicity on a scale. It was off the charts, wasn't it?
Global.
It was global.
It was.
And I remember one night at dinner getting into just the most heated, almost shouting match argument, because some said you'd made a mockery of sport, you'd brought the Olympics into disrepute, you'd made us as a country look ridiculous.
Yeah.
And others of us who were supporters, and I was one, big time, said, look, you know, he's the best ski jumper we got, which was true. Yeah. But I said, it's an amateur sport, and it's brought fun. It's people are watching the Winter Olympics who would never even have known they were taking place. But it really was astonishing, wasn't it?
It was. And FIS were very upset. They thought I was making a mock of the sport and bringing the sport into disrepute in the Olympics. So they banned me from international competition. They banned me from the Olympics. They banned me from the British team. And I was never able to jump again. So, yeah. It was,
You're never able to jump again?
No, well, I trained for the 98 Olympics, but and even though I reached the qualification, they still turned around and said, no, you're not jumping. And that was it. So I retired.
So where did this love of skiing come from? What happened? I mean, you're from Cheltenham, aren't you?
I am, yeah.
Not known for its Alps or its...
No, but we do have one of the biggest dry ski slopes in the country in Gloucester. And that became my home. I went on a school ski trip when I was 13, and I loved it. Of course, I loved watching Ski Sunday.
Yes.
And then went on that first ski trip, loved it, and then Gloucester Ski Centre became my home. I was up there every night after school, or weekend, or school holidays, and skiing became all I ever thought about, talked about, and dreamt about.
But the link between skiing and I mean, ski jumping, where did that was your way of getting in the Olympics, wasn't it?
Well, it was, yes. I mean,
come on, fess up.
Yeah, I mean, originally I wanted to go as a downhill racer because I got into, once I started skiing, I got into slalom, giant slalom, super G, that kind of thing. But at Gloucester, I used to do jumps because they had bumps. And if I hit the bump hard enough and fast enough, I could fly through the air and do all these tricks. So I was quite comfortable flying through the air. And then I was in America racing, ran out of money, saw the ski jumps, and ski jumping was cheaper. It was costing me $250 a day to go ski racing, but $5 a day to go ski jumping. So I could afford that. And so I studied ski. So it was purely an economic decision. And then I worked my way up to the big jumps and qualified and went to Calgary.
I mean, in those days, you were Michael Edwards. This is before you became Eddie the Eagle.
That's right. Well, I was known as Eddie Edwards. Eddie's my nickname.
Right, OK.
Yeah.
And who was funding all of this?
Well, I was. And
How?
my dad. My dad is a plasterer.
Yep.
I'm a plasterer as well. So I'm not busy doing PR work. I'm busy plastering and things.
Yep.
And so, yeah, it was that funded my way. And
so you were an amateur in absolutely the genuine sense of the word.
Yeah, I slept in cars, I slept in cow sheds, I slept in barns, I scraped food out of bins, I slept in a mental hospital when I was in Finland. Anywhere that I could rest my head to go to sleep, and then I got to the ski jumps. As long as I could carry on skiing and then ski jumping, that was my most important thing. And if it meant scraping food out of bins and sleeping in a barn, I would do it because I loved my skiing. Yeah, I was so passionate about my sport.
You kind of fit into the sort of classic English eccentric almost. I mean, somebody who's absolutely fixated on doing it.
That's right. There's an element of that, definitely, yes.
And you're out there in Calgary, you do the second jump, which was an improvement on your first jump.
Yeah.
And no mishaps, no falls.
Didn't fall over, didn't break my neck.
Some of the other lads did go a bit further.
They did.
And weight-wise, you were towards the upper end of this, weren't you?
Oh, yes, yeah. I was a beginner when I went to Calgary. I'd been jumping for 22 months. Everybody else, though, had been jumping for 20 years. So, of course, they were going to jump much further than me. And I was still, in that beginning stages. So, I was still, losing weight. But I was still probably 8 kilograms heavier than the other guys. But
Which
for me, the technique was the most important thing. That would get me further. And then I was losing weight gradually as I carried on ski jumping. So, but yeah, everything was against me. But I still loved doing it.
Were you a fantasist? I mean, did you just think you might just produce an amazing jump?
Oh, I was always, yes. Because, with ski jumping, you could just pull off that amazing, hit it perfectly.
So did you think standing, we saw that clip, did you think standing there, I'm going to do this?
Yes. And I was going to jump further than Matty, who won the gold medal.
This makes the story better. The wonderful optimism about.
And I always thought one day I will. I will jump further than Matty one day, but it never came.
No, well, you've got to have ambitions in life.
That's right. Got to have hope. Got to have ambition. Yeah.
What happened when you came back?
Oh, I came back to Heathrow. And I was waiting for my bags at the carousel, and I had about 30 policemen come to me, and they said, "Oh, we're here to help you through the airport," because I thought they found drugs in my bag or something. And they said, "No, we're here to help you through the airport." And I went through the signs, and there must have been 15,000 people, and they were going mad and all this sort of thing. And then I was whisked to London, did the Wogan show, which was very popular back then.
Big news in those days.
That's right. And then my feet didn't touch the ground for about 3 years. I was travelling all over the world, opening shopping centres, golf courses, hotels, fun rides, doing TV shows, radio shows all over the world.
And you wrote a book.
And I wrote the book, yes, that's right.
Called On the Piece.
That's right. And My Story, Eddie the Eagle, My Story, I did that one as well. So, I just took advantage of the fact that I got christened Eddie the Eagle, and it exploded. Yeah. And, of course, I wasn't allowed to ski jump. They wouldn't let me. So the next best thing for me to do was to embrace that kind of celebrity,
which you
Eddie
did,
Eagle,
and you loved it.
And I did. It was great fun. Travelling first class, earning £10,000 an hour. Who wouldn't love it? So it was great. I'm nearly earning as much as you.
Get out of it. Well, I guess it's better than plastering, isn't it?
It was, but I still do my plastering. Every once in a while, when things got low, didn't do much work, then I went back to my plastering was always my plan B, my default position. So I always had work. I was always able to pay the bills. But obviously the speaking and the TV and the PR work paid more. But when it died, then I had my plastering to fall back on.
There are lots of people who, for all sorts of reasons, find instant fame. It happens. You know, they can be a pop singer, a footballer, whatever it is, and they find instant fame. And perhaps they suddenly start to make money that and you just said you had some amazing engagements and well paid. And did you have a good agent doing all this for you?
Yes.
Yeah, because that's really important, I guess.
Yeah.
A lot of people get into that situation, as I say, they make lots of money very quickly. this fame happens and they can't even go and buy a newspaper without being recognised, and I'll go to the petrol station, or hey, I know, because I was like the panto villain for a few years. So, I mean, I got some love, but I got some real hate.
I bet you were a great villain.
You know, I know what it's like. I do know, in a sense, what some of that's like, but. It often ruins a lot of people. It often wrecks a lot of people. You know, they make loads of money, but they actually finish up owing money. They lose it all.
Yeah.
It wreaks destruction on their personal lives. How did you cope with it all?
At first it was great fun, but then after a while it kind of got to me, because if I wanted peace and quiet, I just had to stay in a hotel room, watch TV, because the moment I went outside, I was bombarded. And it was great at times, but the first couple of weeks, brilliant fun. But then it started to get a bit tiresome and all that kind of thing. And I'm amazed that I'm as popular now as I was 34 years ago, and I'm still busy and traveling all over the world and things. But it is tough, and I wouldn't wish fame on anybody, really. They think, oh, this must be fantastic being famous, but there are, it's not something you can turn off and on.
No, you can't just go for a quiet cup of tea.
No.
Or a quiet pint of cider, or whatever it might be.
That's right. It's with you all day, every day, 365 days a year, and so you've got to be prepared for that.
And what about the film? Because this film was made and. It actually grossed around the world. I mean, unbelievable. It grossed $46 million.
Yeah.
I mean, big stuff. How did you feel about the film? Did you feel were they a bit demeaning to you, do you think?
No, I thought they did a fantastic job. Because I signed the deal to make the movie 22 years ago. And the project just kept stalling. And then I did a TV show in the UK, Splash.
Yes.
And that was the impetus then to make the film.
Yes.
But Taron Egerton played me so well. And I think they did a great job. It's about 90% true, but it only represents about 15-20% of my life as a ski jumper. There was so much more that they could have put in the film, but they had to keep it down to a certain length. So what they did really well.
I watched it. I enjoyed it.
It still makes me cry when I watch it.
I really enjoyed it. Yeah. It was great entertainment.
Yep. It captured the heart and spirit and essence of my story, and it showed that for me, the resilience, the tenacity, that never giving up spirit was my biggest tools in my tool bag.
And optimism.
Boundless
optimism.
Yes. That's right. And I loved it. I really loved it.
And did you make any money out of this?
My ex-wife did.
Right. Okay. That's a very good answer.
Yeah, she got all the movie money, but I've done quite well off the back of it.
Right. So life today for you is comfortable.
Yep.
But you're still working.
Still working.
Still doing a bit of plastering.
Yeah. Well, COVID put a stop to my PR work. My work just stopped immediately, and it's starting to come back, but it's kind of stop, start. But I'm still very busy doing talks all over the world, talking about the Calgary Olympics and things. And then when I'm not busy doing that, I'm renovating a house. I've got permission to build 2 new houses in my garden, which I might do myself, or I might just sell it with the planning permission. So I'm always busy, I'm always doing something and enjoying life.
Now, tough question for you.
Yeah.
Winter Olympics coming up.
Yeah, Beijing.
Pretty much imminent.
Yes.
A few weeks' time.
Yes.
I'm not sure what the British team's prospects are, but they certainly won't get the publicity that 1988 got, I can assure you of that.
No.
Should we be going to the Winter Olympics given the way China behaves?
I think it's good that the athletes are going. But maybe it's right. The officials shouldn't go. I mean, there's 3 times more officials going than there are athletes. I think there's 150 officials, but only 50 athletes usually. So I think the athletes should be going, but maybe the officials they should be sort of showing some sort of, we don't like what you're doing.
Yeah.
But at the same time, these athletes have been training for years and decades even, to compete. And why should they give up on their hopes and their dreams of competing at the Olympics just because what China are doing? But I think the officials, yes, let's form some sort of protest to say we don't like what we're doing, so we're not going to go. We're not going to support. So I think that's the best way. But
that's
the
balance.
Go.
That's the balance you think that.
I would have been gutted if British Ski Federation turned around and said, well, you're not going because what China are doing. And I said, well, this is my life, this is my dream, and why should I give up on that? Yes, I don't like what China are doing, but this is my career.
Do you avoid, Eddie? Do you avoid politics and current affairs? I mean,
Most of the time.
you must get asked a lot of times your opinions on various things.
I do, but I tend to ignore a lot of the politics stuff, and I just get on with my life, really. And
you just get on with being Eddie the Eagle.
I do. And well, I get on with my plastering as well, and get on with Eddie the Eagle work.
Property development,
like that's right.
all the different things that are happening.
Yeah, as long as it doesn't affect me, I'm happy.
Can I just say, not only thank you for coming on Talking Pints, but thank you for, I think you've made a lot more people smile.
Yes, and that's what I wanted to do.
Than you've upset.
Yes.
And I think when books are written in years to come about, the 20th century and extraordinary little moments, I think you've more than earned your place.
Thank you.
And it's lovely to see you, and thank you very much.
It's my round next time.
It's on Eddie next time. Thank you. OK, we're coming towards the end of the programme, and it is time for Barrage the Farage, where you send in your questions and I answer them sight unseen. One viewer asks me, do you think Tony Blair should be knighted? Well, look, I'm not a great fan of Tony Blair, and in fact, you can see that I think I can honestly tell you I'm the only person he really lost his temper and shouted at in public in the European Parliament way back in 2005. And boy, I enjoyed that moment. I too was very opposed to the reasons we went into the Iraq War. I am disappointed that he's been knighted, but the point that's been made today, and it is a fair point, is that when it comes to this, every former Prime Minister gets offered it. And at some point in time, I'm afraid it was going to happen. But I get it. 600,000 people have signed a petition and they are damned angry, and that won't dissipate in a hurry. And I thought Keir Starmer today saying, yes, of course he should have it as a former Prime Minister, but Boris Johnson should never have it. So Keir, grow up. That did look a little bit churlish. Linda asks, how come you've not aged? Oh, Linda, I mean, what a wonderful thing to say. You must have seen my video with Tony Blair in 2005. I've not aged because, well, I suppose years of clean living. Ha ha. Janet on GBNews asked, do you think this new borders and immigration bill will stop and even lessen illegal immigration? It will make no difference whatsoever. There are no disincentives to the criminal traffickers from bringing people across the English Channel. They will go on doing so, and sadly, many of them will finish up in effectively modern-day slavery. We should be hanging our heads in shame. David asks, what do you think the long-term future of Scottish politics is? Well, I think the SNP do well because they seem to be a pro-Scottish party. The others are seen to be far too London-based. But when it comes to it, when the Scots look down the barrel at whether they're actually going to leave the United Kingdom, I don't believe they'll ever do it. But that's enough from me. I'm back tomorrow. Coming up next, it's Mark Stein. First, though, it is the ever chillier weather.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello again. Things have turned a bit colder, and tomorrow will feel certainly chilly, but with a bit more sunshine and with lighter winds, probably won't feel quite as cold as it did today. Quite quickly tomorrow evening, however, we're going to see a frost returning. Follow the isobars. They point all the way up to the north, which is where our air is coming from. The isobars still pretty close together across the northeast, but a very, very windy day here, and still those winds continue to bring wintry showers across the northeast throughout the night. So there is the potential for snow showers and a continued risk of ice across the northeast, but it could also be icy across parts of Wales and Northern Ireland, with showers coming in here and temperatures dropping close to freezing. Most towns and cities just about staying above zero, but certainly rural areas there will be a frost. But actually for most it'll be a fine, bright, cold start to Wednesday. Still some showers for Northern Ireland and Wales, some snow on the hills, but they should fade away. And the showers also fading from the far northeast. Still a cold wind blowing along these North Sea coasts, but for most the wind's a lot lighter during tomorrow, and with largely sunny skies. Temperatures still a touch below average, but as I said, probably feeling a bit more pleasant than today. Quite quickly though, look at the blue taking hold of the map. This is tomorrow evening. Quite quickly, a frost forming, temperatures dropping with those light winds and clear skies. So it's going to be a very cold start to Thursday. Towns and cities likely to be -1, -2. Rural areas -5, -6, maybe -10, where there's snow lying on the mountains of Scotland. Now, it will slowly turn milder across Northern Ireland as wet weather comes in here. Mostly rain, but some snow on the hills. And we'll see that then working into Wales, Northern England, Scotland. Rain at low levels, but some snow on the higher routes here for a time on Thursday. Further south, it'll be all rain as things eventually turn milder. But another cold day across the east, and again, turning frosty, with the potential for some ice on Thursday night.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that,